Well, the novel coronavirus COVID-19 is traveling around the world at a rapid rate, and along with the disease, fear is spreading. Panic buying has seen shortages in some countries. To discuss why we end up having fights over silly things like toilet paper and for advice on perhaps how to calm down, we're now joined by Dr. Saths Cooper, the president of the Pan-Africa Psychology Union. Thank you for being with us, Doctor. So you say there's a pandemic of fear.
Yes. I think unlike any other single incident in history, this has incited such fear that people don't know how to react. And we are stopping listening to the experts. We are listening to others who have views on it, those views are not backed by evidence and fact. And the result is there's a hype out there. So it's like, announcing a sale and saying we're going to have 60% discount. So people queue the day before and fight over these kinds of things. Here, people have wiped out tissues, sanitizers, and all sorts of things like that. And in worst cases, people have fought over toilet paper, canned goods. The world is not going to end. This is a virus that is being contained in many countries where it's hit the hardest. In our countries, we're hitting winter and the flu season, so we're more susceptible to pick up if we're in close contact with somebody who has those symptoms. But otherwise, we should just take the usual personal hygiene precautions.
So what is a rational response? Because you're saying there's a hype, but there's such fear. Is it rational to be careful, to be a little bit worried?
I think you need to be careful because we interact with all sorts of people in all sorts of places, from the home environment into shopping and the work environment and recreational spaces. So close contact, social contact needs to be limited, particularly if persons have visible or you can hear they have, coughing, sneezing, that kind of thing. So stay away from that. Protect yourself and practice hygiene. Good hygiene will prevent you being infected.
What about normal social events? I mean, do we all lock our doors now and stop seeing our friends? How do we be balanced in this?
We can do that if we're really terrified. But I think that part of this hype is also spread by the internet, by our devices. We look at our devices, we distracted in ordinary circumstances by our devices. What more when we have anxieties, we have fears that I can catch it. So every little ping on the device we're going to look at, and if there's an alert on how to deal with it, somebody is providing their own cures or advice. Listen to the experts. Those experts are repeating it. This station, other stations of the SABC and channels are giving education which is evidence-backed.
Yeah.
Follow that advice.
But the advice doesn't tell you exactly how to limit social contact. In some countries, bars are closed, shops are limiting the number of people that come in. We don't have that sort of control. So how do you control yourself? Again, should you cut out contacts with friends? Should you cut out a braai on the weekend?
No,
What's a rational response here?
I think it's being careful, and actually the persons who have flus, sneezes and so on, those are the ones who should say to others, look, I've got a cold. You should do it ordinarily.
Yeah.
But now that there's this kind of alert, because if I'm going to be sneezing in a public place, I may get targeted that, hey, that's a carrier. It's like crying
So stay at home.
a fire in a darkened theater.
Yeah.
Or can you imagine somebody persistently coughing and you go to a show and somebody is persistent, everybody will evacuate.
Yeah.
So I think that there's more hype to it than anything else. In fact, more people have died this year from the flu than have died from the coronavirus.
Yeah. So why are we so scared this time around? Is it because of the rate at which it's spreading? I was even thinking maybe it'll be better. I mean, we have the Tom Hanks testing positive. We have the Canadian president's wife.
Yes.
Maybe when they recover, people will actually start seeing this in a more rational way, knowing survivors, that you do get better.
Yes, because now these are identified and known figures, rather than the anonymous ones who have succumbed.
Who are out there. Yeah.
Yes, who have tended to be the elderly. You're more susceptible later in life, way above 60, and if you have upper respiratory illnesses, if you're vulnerable with other ailments as well, and it only affects your lungs. You know, your lungs will succumb. And in China, those who succumbed were heavy smokers and persons over 70 in the early days. So I think that one needs to understand that it's not just free floating out there and it's going to get you. It's through contact with a carrier. And how many of them are there in our ordinary circles? Very few, but if you feel vulnerable, if you feel scared, then take those precautions.
Yeah.
But don't listen to somebody else's advice who is as afraid as you are. If you have some condition requiring surgery, you will go to a surgeon, not a backyard person, to do it. Those who do suffer the consequences. But what's happening now is we've had an unprecedented number of hits on media, particularly social media, 1.1 billion in just 2 months versus the entire SARS epidemic lasting almost 2 years, 56 million. So it tells you this hyper acceleration of information.
Do you worry about South Africans' psychological state, because we've already got crime? There's kind of a fear that many South Africans carry around with them already.
Yes, but look, South Africans have a legitimate fear about safety, and we should be afraid if the kinds of things that government says it's doing don't get done to contain, to do the checks at border posts, etc. So we're getting, you know, on radio stations that the SABC has and other radio stations, people are calling in with their own anecdotal evidence, but this is being denied by certain government officials. The fact of the matter is we need to ensure that we protect our citizens from an influx of persons who may be carrying, and therefore they should be checked. My information, and this is from people who have traveled and come into the country, is that officials board the flight as it lands, do temperature checks, and then when you alight, you are checked on screens for fever and stuff like that. So I think our authorities are doing the right things, and we need to know that if we take the right precautions, we practice basic and good hygiene right now, avoid the kinds of contact that may result in an infection. And that goes for the flu season actually more than the coronavirus, because we're entering the flu season now. And we should be practicing those kinds of things that have become legion now. Over the last few weeks, we've been getting daily that education. Don't avoid the free education you're getting, and stop listening to other people's versions of what to do, because they are in the same boat like you, if not more scared and more anxiety prone.
All right, so calling for some rational response. Thank you very much. That was the president of the Pan-African Psychology Union, Dr. Sax Cooper.